Welcome everyone to Legion 7.2, and with it the release of the new 5-man dungeon, Cathedral of Eternal Night. This dungeon is pretty high up on the scale of difficulty for 5-man dungeons, and your standard sort of Mythic 1 dungeon is usually vastly easier than what this dungeon provides. So hopefully this guide will help you out with some of the more notable trash abilities and boss abilities, so you don't wipe too much and get too frustrated with your friends. So the entry area of the dungeon has a variety of different mobs available. You'll notice the first pack we pull here has Fel Guards and Wrath Guards. Now pretty much the Fel Guards just cast this Shadow Wall ability. It's a channeled effect, it's interruptible, and it reduces the damage that all of the nearby enemies take. So basically you want to focus this guy down first, or you want to interrupt the Shadow Wall just to stop him from protecting everything. The Wrath Guards cast a Fel Strike, just a line of fire, don't stand in it, pretty straightforward. The Hellblaze Soul Menders cast a Demonic Mending ability, you have to interrupt this to prevent them from healing the party. And finally the Hellblaze Fellbringers cast Burning Celerity. It's a big green bubble on the ground, and if you stand inside this you gain haste, but you also take damage over time. So if your healer is up to it, you can stand in this for the DPS boost, but just be wary of taking damage and perhaps getting a combo from the Wrath Guard's Fire Strike. It's kind of hard to see green fire inside the green bubble, so play it safe, and if you don't think you're going to survive in the haste buff, don't bother going into it. Further down the corridor we meet the Dreadwing enemies. These guys cast a Shadow Swipe, which is a frontal attack aimed at the tank. It deals sort of a medium amount of damage and it knocks you back, which is kind of the big deal because you can actually be knocked right off this platform here and into the abyss, and you'll just die halfway down. So make sure these are facing the wall, or at least away from the balcony. Now behind us, this sort of mini boss here, Dulzak, runs up. This guy's pretty straightforward, however he has one very damaging ability called Shadow Wave. He'll just face a direction and shoot this enormous wave of shadow, and this does ridiculous amounts of damage. You can pretty easily get one shot by this. So you want to stay close to him, watch for which direction he's facing, and just get the hell out of the way. There's also a second variation of these Dreadwings called Dread Hunters, and keeping with the theme of Dread, they have Dread Scream, just an AoE fear, interruptible, so you want to try to interrupt that, prevent them from casting this, and you'll be okay. The final enemy to look at here are the Fellblight Stalkers. These are little fellhounds, and all they'll do is leap to a random player. They'll deal some damage when they arrive, and then they'll start casting a silence around them. So basically get out of the way. They're kind of like the fellhound ads from Archimond. If you've done that, you'll be familiar with the mechanic. Just get away from them pretty much when they jump on you. So at the end of the corridor here, we're met with a spiral staircase, and as we ascend, a pack of trash will jump out at you. And these are some new guys, along with some old guys. The new one is this Hellblaze Temptress. She has a cast time spell called Alluring Aroma. You need to interrupt this to prevent her from mind controlling a player. It's a very deadly mechanic, so you want to have everyone focusing her down and just making sure she's interrupted, as one mind controlled player can do quite a lot of damage to your group. At the top of the staircase we come into this Twilight Grove area. We meet another Hellblaze Temptress along with these fulminating lashers. These lashers just fixate on a player and chase them, and if they reach that player they'll explode and deal damage to the whole group. However, they have very low HP, so you can pretty much kill these very fast and then switch to the Hellblaze Temptress afterwards. So we finally reached the first boss room, however you need to clear out all of the trash here as the boss moves players around a lot. There are some more fulminating lashers that fixate on people. Again, get out of the way, don't let them reach you. There are also some Stranglevine lashers, and these will cast Choking Vines on a player. It's a channeled spell that links a vine to the player. You're supposed to be able to run away from them to break the route, but it doesn't really work very well. Instead, you can just stun or disorient or use any kind of spell disruption to stop the Stranglevine lasher from casting. Patrolling around this room is another Hellblaze Temptress. Make sure you don't get caught out by her, as if she runs into a dangerous pack and starts mind controlling people, you can find yourself wiping pretty quickly. The other type of lasher here are these Bell Spray lashers. They just throw out these pools of poison. You basically just move out of the poison, pretty straightforward. The more dangerous enemy are these Botanists. They have an ability called Blistering Rain, which is channeled and deals damage to the group randomly. It's a pretty heavy amount of damage, so you want to interrupt this if possible. However, the botanist also has a healing ability, so if you only have a few interrupts in your group, you want to make sure at least one is held for this heal, so the botanist doesn't just heal up all of the other mobs in the pack. The final enemy in this section is the Velbark Walker. It's sort of the Trent looking enemy. He has an ability called Lumbering Crash, it just deals AoE damage to your party and knocks back nearby players. He also casts Vile Root, which is a green circle on the ground. Now, none of us actually stood in this, however I'm led to believe if you do stand in it, you're stunned for a small period of time. It was very easy to move out of, however, so yeah, just don't stand in it. Okay, so we reached the first boss, and this guy is no pushover. The first thing you need to be aware of is the fact that he deals a pretty large amount of tank damage, so don't be slack on your tank healing. He has an ability called Timber Smash, which is a frontal attack, so only the tank should ever be in front. And every time he uses Timber Smash, you want to make sure you have some sort of cooldown or active mitigation available, as without it, you can lose maybe 70 to 80% of your HP in one strike. Throughout the fight, Agronax is going to summon these fulminating lashers. It's the same ones we dealt with during the trash, just if you're fixated, don't let them reach you, otherwise nuke them down, they die incredibly quickly. He'll also summon and add like the Stranglevine lashers, however these ones are untargetable. They'll just pull a player to them, and all you have to do is run away to break the vine. You don't have to kill these, you just run away, break the vine, and it's done. The third add type are the Succulent lashers, and these are sort of deceptive. They look like they're very harmless. They just sort of spawn on top of the boss and the tank picks them up. They'll place these patches of poison on the ground with a cast called Succulent Secretion. Now, this cast deals a very large amount of damage to any player within 8 yards, so as a tank you want to pick up this add, and when you see him casting Succulent Secretion, you want to get the hell out of the way, because if you get hit by this and Timber Smash at the same time, you are dead. These guys should be second priority after the Fixating Lashers. Don't try and ignore them, because they do deal actually quite a large amount of tank damage, and it can be pretty deadly. We had a few wipes here because we were 3-manning the dungeon, and we had a pretty undergeared tank. He was sort of tanking the lasher and not moving, so even when I was spam healing him through it, he still went down. Pretty much indicating the fact that despite being sort of little flower guys, these guys are pretty dangerous, so just watch out. After beating this boss, head to the south, not to the north. This is a mistake we've made a few times. South you want to go to. If you go to the north, you go back to the start. So you continue along the bridge, and we meet just a few more of the trash mobs from before. Nothing's changed, just deal with them in the same way as you did before the boss, and make sure you don't get mind controlled. We reach another spiral staircase, and again we go up. Halfway up the stairs there are a couple of mobs here, but they're quickly dispatched by Maiev, so you don't have to worry about them. She gives a little speech as you ascend. She sort of cries about Illidan or whatever it is she does. And as you reach the top, you reach the sort of library area, and along the side are these Hellblaze imps. Despite being sort of little trivial imps, they do have a decent amount of HP, and their cast time spell Fellbolt deals a pretty large amount of tank damage as well as leaving a dot. If you pull too many of these and they cast in unison, they can actually insta-kill a tank, so AoE stuns, single target interrupts and the like are very useful here. As well as these imps, the room is full of Wormtongue scavengers. These guys just throw out different types of books at player locations, and you kind of need to focus these books down, because if you don't, terrible things can happen. I'll actually run a bit of footage in the background here that shows what happens when you don't kill the books, and you can see the results are pretty catastrophic. There are 3 types of books. There are Silence Tomes, Frost Tomes, and Arcane Tomes. Silence Tomes just have this large purple area, and as the name would suggest, you get silence if you stand in it. The Frost Tomes just throw out these sort of frost patches on the ground. They deal a large amount of damage if you stand in them, it's super bad. And the Arcane Tomes will continuously summon these arcane adds. So as you can see, it gets very, very bad very fast. Basically, if a tome is summoned, switch to it and kill it ASAP, because they have very low HP, and if you don't, the results are, well, unpleasant to say the least. After dealing with these, you can pull the mini-boss in this area, Gezerax. This guy has 3 abilities. The primary one you have to watch out for is this Blinding Glare. He'll cast this, and if you're facing him, you'll take a large amount of damage and you'll be stunned. On higher levels, this can easily one-shot you. He chain casts his ability called Fell Glare. Just puts a little green patch on the ground, just move out of the way. Easy stuff. Immediately following his blinding glare, he'll start channeling a spell called Focus Destruction. This just deals damage to people in the party randomly. It's quite a heavy amount of damage, so if you've got a healing cooldown, good idea to use it here. Otherwise, we couldn't find any real way to avoid this. It's just random shadow bolts thrown at everyone. Once you beat this guy, the second boss drops down, Thrashbite the Scornful. This guy is pretty straightforward, although if you do fail the mechanics, it's quite punishing. Quite often you can be one shot, or you can be mind controlled, or various things like that will just crush you if you do it wrong. And the first mechanic this guy has is Pulverizing Cudgel. He puts this large area around him, and if you're within this area, it deals a lethal amount of damage to you, somewhere in the region of 6 to 7 million. However, if you move away, you will take less damage, and the further away you are, the less damage you take. Pretty much just make sure you're outside of the circle area, and have your healer heal up the remaining damage. The next ability he has is Heave Cudgel. He's going to throw his weapon, and it'll just whirlwind around the arena. If you're standing too far out, you get one shot. The weapon actually reaches quite far into the arena. You can see here our mage was standing sort of inside the bookcase, and the weapon still hit him, so it does reach in a bit further than you'd expect. The final ability the boss has is this Scornful Gaze. He picks a player, and he starts casting on them as a fixate, and he'll charge towards you at the end of the cast. Now there are a few different ways of dealing with this. The first way, and the intended way, is to hide behind a bookcase. If you hide behind a bookcase, he'll charge at the bookcase, and he'll smash into the bookcase instead of killing you. However, when he smashes a bookcase, different types of ads are going to pop out. As far as we can see, there are about 3 different types of books that will pop out. There's a satirical book, there's a fictional book, and there's a biographical book. We found the most dangerous one was the biographical book, as it casts a mind control on a player, and given that we were only 3 players, having one of them mind controlled was basically an instant wipe for us. The satirical book also has a silence, silences all players for 5 seconds, and the fictional book applies a 90% slow to everyone. Because we had 2 paladins, we could quite easily just hand to freedom this, so we just focused on killing the mind control book, and then the silence book, and we left the slowing book up till last. However, there is a way to avoid getting these books. If you have lots of immunities in your group, sort of Blessing of Protection, Ice Block, Nether Walk, the like sort of that. Even a tank with stacked cooldowns can take this. You can intercept the charge, prevent him from hitting a bookcase, and no ads will spawn. So we actually took advantage of this a bit. We had the first set of bookcases being smashed, and we just popped DPS cooldowns to basically insta-kill the books. And then after that, we tried to immune as many of them as possible, just so we could avoid spawning book ads and make the fight much more straightforward for us. If you can do this, it makes the fight incredibly simple, and you only have the 3 other mechanics to worry about. After beating this boss, you'll notice the next room is absolutely packed full of these Hellblaze imps. First time I came here, it was actually a little bit concerning. I was almost convinced all these imps would come and we would just wipe horribly because we didn't have good AoE. Fortunately, however, most of the imps run away, and they just run up the stairs and they go into a portal and despawn, so you don't actually have to deal with them. I'm not 100% sure on this, but perhaps on Mythic Plus, if you could get sort of a Death Knight Mass Grip or a Sigil of Change from a Demon Hunter, and if you could AoE stun these and just blow them up with the Living Bomb or with an Affley Lock Soul Flame, you might be able to get a lot of percentage from doing this. However, I'm not 100% sure if they count. I haven't actually tested this myself, so take that advice with a grain of salt. After defeating the few remaining mobs, we're met with yet another Spiral Staircase. Spiral Staircase is a bit of a theme in this dungeon. And the next section is full of spiders. The little necrotic spiderlings around the area just apply a stacking dot. It's poison, so if you have paladins or the like, you can dispel it. And actually I was dispelling and asking our prop pally to also dispel it. The Felstride Enforcers, all they seem to do was a frontal swipe attack. It's pretty low damage, so you could mostly ignore it. However, the dangerous enemy here was the Felstride Orb Caster. She has a cast where she summons an orb, and then she throws the orb away from her, and everyone it passes through takes enormous amounts of damage. You can see our mage was caught off guard here and just basically melted through this orb. Fortunately, he demonstrated what not to do for the rest of us, so after this we were able to dodge it just by looking for where she was facing and looking for where the orb was. After these are dead, you can pull yet another mini-boss, along with some necrotic spiderlings. She will continuously summon more necrotic spiderlings into the fight, so you want to keep up AoE damage to keep the stacks off your tank, and you want to be dispelling these as often as possible. Now, Nalasha likes to use Vanish, She likes to appear behind a random player in your group. After this, she'll cast Venom Storm, which is a frontal AoE cone, deals a huge amount of damage. You basically just want to watch where she teleports to and then get out of the way. We didn't manage this very well, however, it's not a one-shot, so you can pretty much heal through it if it's a problem. But on high Mythic plus levels, this will probably be a one-shot. You need to just watch out for where she's going and get the hell out of the way. When she casts Vanish, she leaves behind this pool of web here, and standing in this just slows you down, reduces your cast speed on all your haste. Don't stand in it, basically. Bad idea. As you're AoEing the little necrotic spiderlings down, they occasionally leave these pools of poison, so you want to just move around the room slowly and make sure you're not standing in the poison. So after you've beaten the Lasha, there's no more trash. You just run up here, you meet Maiev and Illidan. There's a bit of RP where they have a bit of back and forth banter, and you reach the final room of the dungeon, which contains the 2 last bosses. The first of these 2 bosses is Domatrax, and this guy's pretty straightforward, although if you have low DPS you can struggle a bit. Now, the first thing to look at in this fight is the Aegis of Agrimar, which you can see in the middle of the room. If you stand in this, you'll take reduced damage, but you'll also take reduced healing and deal reduced damage. There are periods in the fight where you want to stand in this, otherwise you stay away from it, as whenever you do stand in it, you drain its energy and reduce its effectiveness and reduce the size of it. So you only use this when you absolutely have to. And the first ability the boss has is a Fell Soul Cleave. It's just a small cast time cleave ability, pointed towards the tank. The tank can easily move out of the way. However, if you hit the Aegis with this, it drains a large amount of its energy, so make sure you're never facing this towards the middle of the room. Now the mechanic that you have to use the Aegis for is an ability called Chaotic Energy. After the boss reaches 100% energy, he'll have a pretty long cast time ability, and at the end of it, he'll deal about 6 million damage to everyone. So you have to hide inside the protective field of the Aegis to reduce the damage. Reduces it by 90%, so everyone takes a small amount of damage, easily healed up by the healer. However, if you're not in this, then you're pretty dead without a huge cooldown or immunity. Now at 90% and 50%, Domatrax will spawn these Fell Portal Guardians. These guys will just have a cast time spell to summon in additional reinforcements. At 90%, the portal is going to summon in a bunch of Hellblaze Imps. The imps that you met before that have the cast time Fell Blast. You can pretty easily just nuke them down, and what we did was have people pop their initial DPS cooldowns at 90% and nuke down the Fell Portal Guardians. It was pretty helpful because if they get the cast off, then they spawn a big horrible fire ad that deals constant damage over time. And dealing with those guys is not fun. These searing overfiends will pretty much ruin your day, so you want to kill the Fell Portal Guardians before that happens. At 50% he summons these portals again, however this time instead of the little imps, you get these large Shivaras, and these have a Shadow Sweep ability which deals a pretty moderate amount of damage to everyone around them, but worse, it knocks you back. So if you're trying to hide within the Aegis and these ads are there, then they're also going to knock you away and knock you out and kill you. And this did happen to us. We had an instance where these were spawning at the same time the boss was doing the AoE. And our mage got knocked out. And I got knocked out. I managed to bubble on time, however he was promptly one shot. So if you can see that the boss is about to do his AoE, if the boss is on like 80 to 90 energy and he's approaching 50%, it's possible you may want to stop DPS and just wait for him to do the AoE and then push him over that 50% boundary, as you can control when he spawns these portals but you can't control when he does the AoE. Essentially though, this boss is quite easy if you can have your DPS properly focus the Fell Portal Guardians. It's all about killing these Guardians. If you can kill these within seconds of them spawning, this boss is very, very trivial. However, if you let them sit up, then you're going to have a very hard time. As soon as this boss dies, 4 Dreadwings fly in through the windows. These are like the Dreadwings we fought earlier, and I believe you can move out of the way so they don't instantly pull, but you have to be aware of the fact that they are going to come. If you want to res any dead players or anything like that, then you just get out of the way, move back to the entrance, and just res up the players from a safe distance. And with that, we reach the final boss in the dungeon, and probably the hardest one. It's a bit of a climatic ending to this fairly good dungeon, I'd say. This is Mephistroth. This boss has 2 phases. He alternates between them. You start in phase 1, you go into phase 2, back to phase 1, and if your DPS is low, you can have phase 2 multiple times, which actually makes the fight a lot more difficult. and because we were less than 5 players, this did happen to us, so we'll show that in the footage as well. The main mechanic for the tank to worry about in this fight is the carrion swarm. It's just a frontal cone directed at the tank, and it's just a big frontal AoE, and it leaves nasty stuff on the ground. You want to point this towards the wall, basically. Don't fill up the room, because if you point it towards the middle, the cone expands and it covers a lot of the room and restricts your movement a lot. It's super, super bad, basically. Just point it towards the wall. The other ability he has is Dark Solitude. He just picks out 2 to 3 players, and he throws this shadow orb at them. And this shadow orb splashes, and anyone splashed by it is affected by the damage over time. So you want to make sure that all players are spread out about 10 yards, so they're not splashed by this, and only 2 people get the Dark Solitude dot at a time. Another ability he had that forces you to move around a lot is the Demonic Upheaval. He puts this crystal ability on you, and after a few seconds, you'll spawn a massive green circle around you. And if anyone's inside this green circle afterwards, it deals a huge amount of damage to you. So you want to drop these circles at the edge of the room. If you get the debuff, run out, drop your circle, and then come back in just so you're in the safe area. When the boss gains 100% energy, he'll cast this Shadow Fades. He becomes invisible and phase 2 starts. During phase 2, Illidan is in the middle of the room and he's gathering his own energy. If you have boss frames installed, you can see Illidan's energy bar. When Illidan gets to 100 energy, the phase ends and you go back into phase 1. During this time, the boss spawns these shadows around the room, and the shadows will cast Shadow Blast towards Illidan. If any players get hit by these, you take an enormous amount of damage. So you want to dodge these whilst trying to DPS down the shadows. The shadows have very low HP, so you can kill them quite quickly, but they also spawn fairly quickly as well, so try and keep on top of them. If Illidan is hit by any of these Shadow Blasts, it drains a large amount of his energy, and if he gets hit by too many of them, you're going to be in this phase forever, basically, and the boss deals increasing amounts of damage over time the longer you're in this phase, so you want to make sure Illidan doesn't get hit by any of these, so that the phase ends quickly. And now the $1 million question. How do we prevent Illidan from getting hit by these Shadow Blasts? Well, helpfully, the Aegis of Agrimar is still here, and this time a tank can pick it up. When the tank activates it, they get a sort of 180 degree barrier around them, and they can control this by whichever direction their character's facing. So if they stand on top of Illidan, they can rotate the barrier, use it to block the Shadow Orbs from coming in. Now, because the patch just launched, this is a little bit buggy. Sometimes you still get hit even though it looks like you blocked them. Sometimes the orbs are a bit invisible, but I'm hopeful that Blizzard patches this out and the mechanic will work as intended in the upcoming weeks. And during phase 2, as if the ramping damage wasn't enough, there's going to be a lot of Dreadwings flying overhead as well. And these will bombard the platform with these green swirls. You stand on them, you take damage, as expected. Just stay out of these, dodge the green, dodge the purple, kill the ads, standard WoW stuff. And after this you're back in phase 1. Most groups will kill him at this point. They won't see phase 2 a second time. However, we did see phase 2 a second time as one of our players was dead and we only had 1 DPS up, so the fight sort of dragged on a bit. But it was helpful to learn, just to let us know what was going on and to help us manage the mechanics. So hopefully our learning of this also helps you, and you can use what we've conveyed here to help you through this dungeon on Mythic 1 to Mythic 10, and whichever levels above that. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Surrender the shield, and I will grant you a quick death. Beware the shadows.
To me, heroes. Shield me with the Aegis while I tear this Dreadlord from the shadows.
Run! Fool! I have led you to the slaughter. Beware the shadows!
To me, heroes! Shield me with the Aegis while I tear this dreadlord from the shadows!
Withstand the power of the Legion!
There is nowhere left to run, demon!
Run! Fool! I have led you to the slaughter.
In ages past, this shield defended the young world soul against madness and corruption. Today, it serves those who fight for Azeroth. I am Aegwin, guardian of Tirisfal. I left behind this echo of my power as a safeguard in the event that the wards I put in place to protect the tomb failed. Indeed, I sense that the master of the Burning Legion now schemes to claim his prize. Yet there is still hope. By anchoring the pillars of creation in the halls below, you will restore my wards and push back against the invaders. Then you must venture into the depths of the tomb and use the Eye of Amun-Thul to eradicate the Fellstorm and sever the Legion's link to Azeroth. But the pillars alone cannot bring victory. Only a united army founded on strength and courage can conquer the Legion. When you and your allies are prepared for the final battle, my echo will return to aid you. The fate of Azeroth rests in your hands.
Khadgar will want to hear of this.
It seems preparations are in order.